Everybody, welcome to, well, the True Crime Squad. Drunkumentary, if you couldn't tell. I came a little bit more prepared tonight. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm working on this drink that Scott made me. It's got not gin, believe it or not. It's limoncello and some kind of blue vodka that he and Matea made that has some kind of blue Kool-Aid in it. I don't know. And that Minute Maid lemonade that's 0 sugar and some sparkling water. And it's damn good.
Wow.
That's all.
You're so fancy. Whiskey over ice.
Yeah.
It's banana.
Nice. All I have to do is say, I need a drink for my show. And Scott's like, on it, man. So.
That's really funny.
I know. He really missed he missed his calling to not just be a bartender, really.
He did. I think I missed part of my intro, which was to say that I'm Kristi Brower, and I'm here with my sister, co-host, and partner in crime, Katie Weaver.
That's true.
And this is what we call our drunkumentary.
Yes. I kind of felt like I was drunk just watching the documentary, and I just finished like 10 minutes ago. So fresh ready.
Gosh. Okay, so this is the documentary called The Lady of Silence, or The Little Old Lady Killer. You may have remembered we actually covered this case a while back, a couple years ago, I think.
At least, yeah.
But this is a serial killer story from Mexico. And it's a very interesting case, but the documentary is, I'm not kidding, hilarious. And it's terrible to say because I can't hardly hear the music. Can you hear the music, Katie?
I can hear the music. Will you guys tell us that are in the live, what is the volume of the music for you? Is it too low? Is it too high? Is it perfect? You'll understand the music as we start talking a little bit.
We're going to get to that, but we definitely wanted to.
And let us be very clear. We don't think that what Juana Barca did is funny. No. We don't think that because there are a lot of victims and their families out there, we don't think that's funny. But we thought the documentary was a scream for multiple reasons. We'll get into it.
Okay. Yes, we will. Yes, thank you. That was very well said. Because, we're never making fun of the crime itself. This is a whole other thing. Okay.
Well, we'll probably make fun of Juana, though. Let's be clear. I mean, holy shit.
I'm going to turn the music up a little bit. Amy says they can hear it, but it's quiet. I want you to be able to hear us, of course, but we would like you to be able to hear the music, too. Because the music is a very, very important part of this documentary. And I couldn't use the soundtrack they used on Netflix, of course, but what I could do is make one of my own that kind of reminded me of it. Mm-hmm. It's this kind of jazzy 80s cartoon kind of music. Mm-hmm. Sort of detective-y, sneaky kind of music.
Kind of Scooby-Doo-ish at times.
Kind of Scooby-Doo-ish at times. Sometimes there are some sound effects in there. Mm-hmm. It is not in any way what you would expect to be in a serial killer documentary.
No, it doesn't always match. You know, they're talking about some terrible thing and the music's going bum, 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 bum.
Did you hear that? Yeah.
Yes, so, Pink Panther, that's a good,
Yes, Pink Panther is a great example. But it doesn't match up with like the tone of what's happening during the documentary. And it's just a little too upbeat the entire time. So I
don't know
want
if you
this
guys
music.
remember that we had intro music a couple of years ago that was upbeat, and we got taken down about it multiple times from people that thought that was super inappropriate and we were being
Yeah.
really disrespectful. We're talking about these horrible crimes and we have this upbeat, like, fun music, and yeah, I get it now.
I do too. I completely get it. I don't think ours was nearly as bad as this, but and this is not the exact music, but I went and found things that sounded similar. We're just going to play it on a loop underneath because it's just so funny how if it's not planned and synchronized and stuff, it doth not fit at all.
No.
So I think maybe an appropriate place to start would be right here with this.
Yeah.
So this happened at late 80s, late 90s, early 2000s. It was a span of like 6 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in Mexico City. And lots of abuelitas were getting murdered. So grandmothers, old ladies, little old ladies that lived at home or had family who worked during the day were being strangled. And after quite a lot, 6 at least, came in, the police decided to think maybe this was a pattern.
Well, they were all strangled with stockings, scarves, telephone cords, cordage from drapery, just, whatever the killer could get a hold of in the house. Yeah. It was always something from the house.
Always, yeah. That was, yeah. And then things kept going missing. So these houses often had some robbery too. They were ransacked and some things were taken. Mm-hmm. And the police, so they start getting composite sketches of this person that they think is doing it. And this is 2 of them. There were like 30, which was one of the weirdest choices I've ever seen a police organization make. But they put out every sketch from every individual witness. Mm-hmm. And so there's like 30 sketches out there of a sort of similar looking person and a sort of not similar looking person. And they had all different kinds of
epic confusion. And people do not know, they cannot figure out, the police cannot figure out if this killer is a man or a woman. Because witness accounts are that this, and also just the crimes themselves indicate that this is a large, very strong human that is able to pull this off. And so they're super confused for a long time, many years, super confused.
Well, yeah, they start out with
doing this.
They think it's a nurse. They think it's a nurse going in because the victims are letting this person in their house. Mm-hmm. So they think it's a nurse. So then a couple nurses get arrested because they think maybe it was them. It wasn't them. No. They go through all these different theories.
The first nurse that is arrested, her colleagues are so pissed and absolutely 100,000% certain it's not her, who, by the way, she doesn't look a damn thing like any of the sketches.
No, but I mean, how would, there were so many of them.
Right. So the nurses organize and basically shut down an entire city road and tell the police they aren't leaving until they turn her back over to them because it's not her.
Yeah.
It wasn't her. Yeah.
It was definitely not her.
But the nurses killed me. They were so pissed. They were done with this. Yeah.
They came out in like a battalion. Mm-hmm. And I think the police knew they were going to kick some ass. Mm-hmm. So then they arrest this poor unfortunate soul.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Which unfortunately we're not going to use a lot of names in this because frankly they don't use hardly any names in the whole documentary.
Well, her name is Araceli Vasquez.
Yes, we know her name. That's true. I guess we do know her name. So Araceli was in possession of stolen property from the homes of some of the victims. Mm-hmm. And so they were sure it was her. They celebrated. If you'll see what she has on her head, it is a wig because the police made her hold it and then put it on her head when they took her mugshot. But it wasn't actually, she wasn't wearing it.
It wasn't even hers.
It wasn't hers. They just handed it to her and told her.
The way
I
they
don't know about policing in Mexico.
The way they handle the when they're booking her and taking her photo, the press are all there.
Yeah.
They're a part of it. And the police say, make her hold the wig. It will look more believable. So she's standing there holding this wig that isn't even hers.
No. It was insane.
And also they have witnesses saying it's not her. She's little. She was very short. They're like,
this little
the person
short
who did this
lady
was much, much taller. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, this person who's done it is big, tall like a man and strong like a man. And so this poor Araceli, but I mean, is Araceli still in prison? Did they ever let her out?
I think she's out now. She did 19 years in prison without ever even being charged with anything.
No trial, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So this was insane.
Yeah.
This part really pissed me off because we'll get to, when they sort of remember, oh yeah, remember that lady we put in prison?
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of get through the nurse thing and decide, okay, it's not nurses. So then they decide that it must be like a transgender sex worker. They've decided it's a transgender person, so they're bigger and stronger and tougher.
Mm-hmm.
So they just go round up like all of the trans sex workers they can find.
And just sex workers they can find.
And just anyone.
They're wrestling them into
workers.
cars. Yeah, putting them. Some of them said that if you asked any questions at all, they would beat you. They had no idea what was happening.
No. And then they stood there with all these stupid pictures trying to match them up to see if one of them matched the picture.
Right.
Or
this happened in Mexico City.
Pictures. Yes, Mexico City.
But in the documentary, a lot of the recreations are done with the original people, not actors.
Yes, they are. That is the weirdest.
Which is a dubious decision because, it's 20 years later now. And so you've got all these kind of old ladies dressed as whores, as they called themselves. That's not me. That's them. That's what they called themselves.
That's what they called it.
Dressed as the whores, standing on street corners and against these buildings in these really suggestive positions and clothing. And they're clearly not in the biz anymore.
It's definitely retired. So, but that part of this documentary is one of the funniest parts because this case was 20 years ago. So most of these people aren't even still working in the same job or in the police or anything anymore. It's so weird.
And they've just got piles of makeup on them. I mean, they could be drag queens the way they've got them fixed up. And with the clothes and the poses, and oh my God, it's terrible. But these poor women were just targeted for no reason at all. And all drug into the police station. It was ugly.
And a lot of them got charges after. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But guess what they didn't find?
Yeah.
They didn't find anyone that matched one or both of those pictures right there.
No.
Didn't arrest anyone.
No. In the meantime, there's a criminologist who shows up in the show a lot. I'm going to really call her a true crimer because that's what I think she is.
She should be the hero of this story.
Absolutely.
If you ever got any credit at all.
So she tells the chief that she wants to do a model recreation of what this person would look like. And he says, no, we only do that with like cadavers, with dead people. And she's like, So anyway, I'm doing it anyway. So she does it at her house.
Well, remember you told her she watches too many TV shows?
Yes. Yeah. So in her home, she makes this bust recreation of what she thinks that the killer looks like. And it is terrifying. And
here it is.
Right there. And she starts bringing it around some of the witnesses and asking them, does this look correct? And they start making some suggestions and she keeps tweaking it. Here's the problem with it. It will melt if it is out in the heat too long. So in her hot apartment, it's really not safe. And so it lives in her refrigerator. And her children every time they open the fridge, there's the face of a serial killer in there staring at them. And they're not really having it. But can you imagine
Can you
every time you
imagine
open the fridge
opening your
having
fridge
this
with that
shit?
in there?
Yeah.
I thought that part was so funny.
Her kids
But
kept
she
telling her,
was
Mom, it's got to go. Yeah, you think?
it was so
Which
great.
she did a good job. She actually did a
Well,
really good job.
she just did the thing that they should have done with all of those composite drawings was they should have created one out of all of them, not putting them all on buses in the entire Mexico City. It was so funny.
Yeah.
So she like took all of the characteristics and tried to meld them together into one face, which actually made way more. If they had listened to this chick, they probably would have caught her a lot sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. But the head in the fridge just absolutely slayed me. I can't even imagine. Mars would have never opened the fridge again. Even when it was out of the fridge, she would have never opened the fridge again. I mean, that is so scary.
Yeah.
But
so they're going along, doing their best to investigate, kinda, and then they arrest this guy, Jorge.
Yeah.
Jorge, who they charged with 2 of the murders. They believe him to be a copycat, that he's not the real little old lady killer. He's the guy, he's copycatting, because now they're convinced that there's multiple serial killers because there's so many bodies and they still have not caught anyone.
Well, every time they arrest somebody, the killings keep happening. So rather than deciding that maybe we don't have the right person, they're like, no, there's a lot of killers. Yeah.
It's a copycat. Yeah, they just, it's the worst police work I've ever seen in my whole life. So this guy, Jorge, they're pretty sure he actually did commit 2 of them. He went to prison for it. He's still in prison for 2 of them.
Yeah.
But, they just jump around with all these different ideas. They had this idea called parks and gardens.
Oh, yes, the parks and gardens theory. But this is after the LGBT community has absolutely had it. Because they just keep pressuring and putting really unfair focus on transgender people and just the LGBTQ community in general, and just keep coming after people with their pictures and questioning them. And they're like, leave us alone. Because now they have people in their communities afraid of them, and they're already discriminated against, and then you add this color to it that just maybe one of them is a serial killer, and they weren't. And finally they were like, listen, bro, get off of us. And they kind of did.
They did. Well, they never found anything.
No.
They never had any proof at all. To go after all those people was so terrible because it wasn't there was nothing pointing at them other than they still can't identify these terrible drawings right here. So then
oh no.
Well, okay. Should we talk about Tiger?
Yeah. Enter El Tigre. Yes.
Maybe. Where am I?
There is a dignitary in
Talk
the
about
government.
him for a second because I'm missing. I can't find my pictures.
Okay. He's the dignitary in the government. He's kind of like the attorney general, I think, or he is the attorney general. And in his words, this guy is the biggest jackass in the show.
He is. His
maybe
ego
a bigger
is
jackass than Juana Barza, maybe. And
it's hard to say.
So they're interviewing him, and he says, anyone in my position, we all get a nickname, and mine is the Tiger. And he's sitting in front of this enormous velvet floor-length painting of a tiger that is not good. And he's
not good
the tiger.
At all.
And the tiger, they throw this, they ask him, will you help us? And he says yes. So he comes in and sits down, and they share with him their parks theory. So they have all of these pins in a map of this is all the places that women have been murdered, and here's where the parks are. So we think that maybe they are meeting this person at the parks. And he's like, how far from the parks are some of these apartments? And they're like, about 6 blocks. And he's like, next. Wrong. Wrong. That's wrong.
You have no
because
idea.
These
Might
are
as
old
well
people
just turn
and
in
they're
your
not
jobs
walking.
now.
Right? Yeah, pretty much. It's like these are old people and they're not walking 6 blocks to the park. Are there events in the park? Are there? There it is. Yeah.
This is him. This is Tiger, and through the whole time they're interviewing him, he is in front of that painting, which is the weirdest painting of a tiger I've ever seen in my life.
And referring to himself as Tiger.
Tiger, yes.
So Tiger, he tells him, you're totally wrong. Are there any events that go on in the parks that are for old people? And they say, not to our knowledge. And he says, well, that's why you're wrong. So he says, this is the quote. He says, so they give him a new plan. Okay, so we're just going to start getting all of these pictures out here, and we're just going to start trying to look at it in a different way. And he says this, just like this in the show. He says, do it any way you want, motherfucker. Just do it better. What?
Yeah, it was all like, you are police and you suck. You must do it better by catching the murderer, you know?
And then he's like, and that's how I helped them. And we're all like, wow, Tiger, without you, where would this investigation have ever gone? He acted like he solved it. He didn't do a damn thing.
They said, will you help us? And I said, yes. What?
He didn't help them. He didn't know. He had no idea.
Well, okay, so there's this map basically of the area where all these murders are, and he goes, you see how this road goes that way and that road goes that way? Well, those are quick getaways as long as you go the opposite way. What?
Yeah. So you've got to start thinking of this backwards.
Yes.
The police are like,
So they make Jenny wants to know if he's single. Jenny, it's hard to say. I did find him online, and he is still a political official in Mexico. So got some dinero, you know. Oh my God, though. So they get this plan. They put all the pictures in the cop cars because, again, they're showing people 30 different faces. What the fuck? And so then he's got him driving the opposite ways all around this certain route, and then they're also supposed to zigzag. Was that it? Zigzag? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, there were a couple of things they were supposed to do. Serpentine. That's what they're supposed to do.
Serpentine.
They're supposed to drive it forwards and backwards, and then they're supposed to serpentine as well. So they're driving around doing their forwards and backwards and serpentine with all these pictures in the windows.
It's like asking Michael Scott how to sell paper. He doesn't know. He doesn't know.
He just made some shit up, and they did it and got lucky, because what actually happened is the neighbor of the last victim saw the killer in her apartment and chased her out into the street just as one of these, serpentine and cops came by.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, that's the one. The one guy jumped out and grabbed her, and she started punching the crap out of him. And so it took him about 3 cops to take her down.
Yeah, because as you can imagine, she's a lot bigger than them.
She is a lot
She gave the
bigger
first
than
guy
them.
a pretty good beat down before the other guys got there to help get her wrestled into the car.
Yeah. So this is her, Juana Barraza. She is the little old lady killer.
Mm-hmm.
I can't pronounce the Mataviejitas Murders. Anyway, that's the Spanish.
That's correct. Yeah.
2
years of Spanish in high school. What were we doing? We don't have a fucking clue what we were doing. We don't know.
Don't know. But anyway, this is Juana Barraza. So she is the actual killer. So if you look, like, here is her mugshot. And then look at this with the bust.
Mm-hmm. They could pull it out of the fridge long enough to
they did
to get a little
but
peek.
I mean, it's fairly close.
It is.
So then we start learning about Juana Barraza. And you guys, this
hold on to your butts.
Yes.
No. Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
Here's another picture of Juana. So Juana is known as a luchador, which is a Spanish Mexican wrestler, and her name is the Lady of Silence.
Or
And here she is.
La Dama de Silencio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here she is in her luchador outfits. But let's take a moment to appreciate that belt that old Juana's wearing right there.
Not the butterfly belt or the butterfly mask, but just the belt that's draped over her shoulder.
Like the championship belt she is wearing.
Yeah.
Which would normally be worn by someone who, I don't know, actually ever wrestled as a luchador. What Juana did was cosplay, I think.
Yeah. She showed up. She came to the wrestling ring. She had lots of friends there. Oh, dear God, the friends.
Again, original people that actually knew her back in the day.
I would watch this again just to see those two again. Holy shit.
There's so much image-wise and stuff we can't share. You have to watch this. But they were hilarious.
Yeah.
But it kind of dawned on them.
She put together teams. She was kind of more of a manager, it seems like. She organized wrestling teams, and she would be on the teams, but she never actually wrestled.
They have this conversation, two of them. Did you ever wrestle the Lady of Silence? Well, no. Did you ever wrestle the Lady of Silence? And they're realizing, yeah, none of them ever did. And they did point out that anybody can buy that belt. So she was a fake luchador.
Well, when she was arrested, she had a keychain on her that had a picture of her. It said, Merry Christmas from the, hold on, I gotta look it up again. 2 years of Spanish in high school. What the hell was I doing? I have no idea. It says, Merry Christmas from La Dama de Silencio, the world champion. The world champion.
The world champion, yeah.
So she actually had keychains made. Yeah.
She just made the keychains. So weird. But what they decided, she hurt her back. And so at one point, the police decide that what must have happened is that she was taking out her rage on her weightlifting, and they thought wrestling. And when she couldn't do that anymore because of her injury, that's when she started killing the little old ladies.
I beg to differ, though. And here's why. The friends said a couple of things that make me think she was in the middle of this crime spree when she was hanging out with them, because she would take them to very expensive restaurants and treat everybody.
She always had tons of money.
They were always amazed at how much money she had.
Her victims.
Yeah. But because she was cleaning out their wallets, their jewelry boxes, anything that was, that she could quickly grab of value. But also they said that she recolored her hair at least once a month.
Yeah.
Her hair was red, it was brown, it was blonde, it was gray. And the style
sort of answers where some of these pictures have come from.
With all these different hairstyles. One of them told her, your hair's all going to fall out. You're dyeing it too much. And she was like, no. Yeah. Well, how did she have that much money and her hair was always changing? Don't tell me she started killing when she couldn't wrestle anymore, because she never wrestled, for God's sake. This isn't even
she didn't.
A place of reality.
The police are so clueless, they still don't even know that.
The one poor wrestling friend had really been a good friend and had her at her mother's house multiple times. And when the news broke, she was actually watching TV with her mother when the news broke. And suddenly this cop car opens up, and who steps out of it but Juana Barraza? And her family was pissed at her and told her that this was, how dare she bring this person around their mother? And she's like, how would I know? But yeah, she'd been at her mother's house, her elderly mother's house. But the other girl, again, a drag queen could do better makeup than this. It was the craziest shit I've ever seen. The eye makeup, I had to pause it just to appreciate it for a minute.
I thought the lipstick was especially good too.
She said, I miss her. I need her. Do you?
She apparently used to confide in her and tell her about all her problems and fights with her daughter.
Yeah.
Thank God the daughter's okay.
Give them good advice, I guess. Anyway, the wrestling friends were something.
And they were very surprised. They didn't think that she
very
was a violent
surprised.
person. They'd never had an experience with her that made her think she was a violent person.
Surprised and hurt. So hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, they really were. It's sad
Yeah.
because they had no idea. They just thought
No.
that she was their friend, and
I
you know,
should really stop drinking this, man. I am going downhill fast.
you got to stay where you're at because I may
You
need some
started
assistance.
downhill. I got it. Yep.
I did. I always wait to start right at the show, and I realize that's a mistake. I'm not. Yeah. So they get Juana Barraza, right?
Mhm.
They get her into the police station.
But wait.
Oh,
They wrestle her into that car. She
yes.
wasn't even handcuffed. They get her out of the car to take her in the police station, and there is a mob of people.
Oh yeah, because
And she's trying to pull, she has this red coat on, and she's kind of trying to pull it up around her face and block her face with her collar, but she's not very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dumbfounded, man. She's not even cuffed.
She could have just run at any moment.
To walk out, punch the shit out of everybody in front of her, which she sure could have done.
She'd already punched the shit out of that one cop.
She kicked his ass.
She did.
So, they march in there, and again, the way they do their mugshots is in front of the press. So there's like a gazillion people in there shouting at her, asking questions, and taking pictures and taking the mugshot. And it's like a freaking circus. And again, never cuffed, never restrained. No.
The way all of the stuff is handled through the police station and the court is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Big differences between Mexican law enforcement and U.S. law enforcement. That is for sure.
Well, and
Yeah.
how the perpetrator is handled too.
Well,
Really?
right. Well, they also had a cell for her that was like a two-way mirror. So they had her kind of hanging out, sitting in there, and they were bringing victims in and victims' families in to kind of see her
Yeah.
and also to speak with her. So the
Yeah.
one victim, it starts with a woman whose mom was murdered, and they kind of tell her story. And
Yeah.
she walks right up to her and tries to speak to her. And she just kind of turns and walks away. What? Vallo's victims families would have liked the opportunity.
But she also
couldn't
could
believe
walk
it.
away, like she left the room.
Yes, left the
Like,
room.
where did she go? But another victim went up to speak to her and asked who her saint is. And she
Who her
said
God is.
who her
Yeah.
god is. Santa Muerte, which is the saint of death or mother of death.
Well, when they searched her house, she had a huge Santa Muerte altar as well.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
a bunch of these cards and stuff. Yeah, so
Mhm.
she was the saint of death was her god. That was a little creepy. But then we get into right, Deanna, after she beat the crap out of those cops, that they didn't even have handcuffs on her.
Right.
I know. It
No.
was so weird. So they start talking to her, and they kind of, the one officer talks to her for a while and kind of gets her opening up, and then she starts, admitting maybe she did kill that last lady, and she's telling all these stories, and a lot of it isn't true. And they keep pushing her, and well, then she starts saying exactly what she'd done.
Yeah.
And what she talked all about, how she would go into these houses, and if the lady made her angry, then she would grab something that was sitting there. These are some of the actual victims, and grab something handy like a cord off from an alarm clock, a wire, a rope, a curtain,
a
cord thing.
Yeah.
And she would just choke them to death right there and then rob them.
Oh, good to know. Racky's from Mexico and says this is not the Santa Muerte. This is a creepy mix of Guadalupe Virgin and the Death. Interesting.
Oh, well, thank you for telling me that, because I Googled Santa Muerte.
Mm.
So just know that picture's wrong, but the words are right. How's that?
Yeah, Santa Muerte is what she said. Yeah.
Yeah, Santa Muerte. So she starts admitting what she's done. And then he asks her, if she had abuse in her childhood, and she says yes. And
Yeah.
he says, from who? And she says, from my mother.
Hmm.
And then she tells a story about how her mother traded her to some old man for 3 beers,
For a case of beer.
a
Yeah.
case of beer. Yeah.
When she was an early teenager, she said. So she was trafficked
She was
by her
trafficked by her
mother.
mother.
Yeah.
So ultimately, yeah, she wanted to kill old ladies because she was killing her mother,
Hmm.
basically.
Over and over and over again. Yeah.
Which is horrible. And the terrible, most serious part of this, which is really terrible.
Yeah, and tremendously sad. My God. Yeah.
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 So they get that out of her. Well, then they decide, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. They decide that they're going to have her show them how she did the strangulations, because they have all the cords, they have everything the way that it was tied. So they're kind of checking her on that. So they start rounding up stuff, a scarf, some pantyhose.
Well, first he starts with his tie.
Scarf. Oh,
and
his
it's
tie.
the medical examiner, the doctor,
Yeah,
takes off his tie and says, show me how you did it. And she's like, okay, motherfucker, let's go. And wraps her around his neck.
And she's like, sorry, is that a little too tight?
And there's
And she
video
shows-
of this. There's actual
Yeah,
footage
there's
of this.
some of
Yeah.
this. They do like 4 different examples, and she
Yeah.
pretends to choke him every time.
Mhm.
And then the one CSI lady shows us, like, it's like her most prized possession she's ever
Mhm.
shown anyone. And it is the stockings that she pretended to, choke the medical examiner with. She has autographed the stockings on both sides.
Mhm. She had a
The
little
Lady
piece
of
of cardboard
Silence.
in there to be able to really show you both sides. This is her signature, the Lady of Silence on both sides. This is her knot. This is what she tied. I've never undone it. Oh yeah, that's some of the worst murderabilia I've ever seen.
It was so bad, and she's just smiling.
Real
And
proud
then
of it.
the congratulatory stuff with the cops, like they actually solved this, because they totally did not. It was just circumstance that they were on the street when the neighbor chased Juana Barraza out of that house.
Yeah, he's the hero.
Yeah, he's the hero of the
And
show.
they did
His
give
name is
him-
Joel.
Yeah, and he was a sweetheart. He was a doll.
Oh, he
And
was
he loved
brokenhearted.
his
that
neighbors so
his
much.
neighbor Anna was, somebody.
And he was so sad because he had to stay at work a little bit late that night because he was waiting for a delivery, or he would have been there. He could have saved her, maybe
and
not.
he was so worried, and they'd been talking about this beforehand, and talking about being safe and stuff, because he just was, it's like he kind of had a feeling that maybe something was going to happen to her. And then
he was very
And it was
worried, and
really
then it
sad.
did. But he's the one that solved the case, straight up. Yeah.
He really did. But the police. So the police officers that actually arrested her, they got 100,000 pesos
A couple of different medals, and apartments.
and apartments, like
Mhm.
given to them as
Mhm.
rewards for catching her.
Mhm.
And these guys, they're talking about it, and they're old looking dudes. Like, they're old and gray. Like, this was 20
Yeah.
years ago
Mhm.
that they got these big commendations, but they were just thrilled about it.
Right.
It was really
But
funny. It was very
Wada made fools out of the police for so many years. And sometimes they made fools of themselves, honestly. But because every time they would arrest somebody, they're like, we've got her! We've got the killer! And then it wasn't. Every time.
Yeah. Every time it wasn't. And then they start making up these stories about the copycats and trying to cover their asses before Tiger comes and solves it all with the going this way and that way and serpentine. And that's how we're going to solve this case.
Yeah. And the officers are the nicest, most genuine. Like, they were desperate to solve this case. Every time another call came in, they were just heartbroken to have to go to yet another scene and, and cope with another family and all of this stuff. They were desperate to solve this case, but
they were.
Lana was a ghost. She was just a ghost.
She was. Well,
So
she moved all the time. She changed
Uh-huh.
her hair color all the time. She was just thinking way ahead of them.
Well, and her apartment was loaded with different bags of clothes, and she was changing her appearance every time pretty significantly. But what she was doing is she was approaching little old ladies while they were out and telling them that she had assistance from the government. At the time, the government was offering these, I think they were like kind of like a prepaid Visa or like a food stamp
Mhm.
card, something like that, like a, some kind of a card that they could use to help. The initiative was actually to return dignity to the elderly in Mexico
Yeah.
that were so poor and so unable to care for themselves because they were too old to work. And so it was a beautiful initiative to return dignity to the elderly. So
Yeah.
she's walking around with a stack of these cards, and she's telling these people, "Hey, are you live alone, or you're elderly, you're not working, you qualify. What's your address? I will come by, I'll bring your card, we'll get you set up. Let's get you some help." And of course, these people
Yeah.
are like, "Thank God, thank you. Here's my address. Come on over." She
Yeah.
doesn't seem like, well, a serial killer. She seems like an official from
No.
the government. So they're just inviting her right in their homes. And then, of course, she's coming into their homes and murdering them.
Yeah.
One of the officers said they thought that at a time, they thought it was a male wrestler because he said whoever's doing this is really good at the arm bar technique, only they're not using an arm, they're using stalking or something like that. But
Yeah.
the fact that they're able to put the kind of chokehold on her or on their victims that they're able to put, they actually had suspected a male wrestler for quite a while. It just never had really stuck with them that it was
Yeah.
a woman doing it.
Yeah.
Except for they did
It
arrest some
really
women that turned out to not be correct. But
They did, but they just couldn't imagine that a woman was really going to be this strong.
mm-mm,
But she is.
ever.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So she goes to trial. They convict her. They give her 759 years in prison
Uh-huh.
for 16 murders
Yep.
and 12 robberies, because those were the ones that they could prove. Now, there are something like 52, 54 victims.
Right.
And so they've never really fully solved if she did all of them, other than the one guy that they think did 2 of them.
And poor Araceli that did something like 20 years in prison for nothing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So at the end of the documentary, they're like, well, let's talk about this woman that you arrested, this Araceli. What about her? And the police were like, Araceli? Don't know her.
Oh, yeah. They were like, oh, there was a different crime, something. Yeah, she did something. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember.
I think that was a different case.
Something.
I don't even know. Totally,
yeah.
Like several of them. It's so shitty. And poor Araceli is in the documentary. Like, I'm still here. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
So sad. The way that they just were like, nah, never heard of her. But not all the cops, some of the cops' names were shown, but almost all of the other people in this documentary never got more than a first name shared, or just a name flashed really fast. And if you look up a cast for this documentary, the only person listed is Juana Barraza.
Wow.
No one else is listed.
Not even the tiger?
No, he's not even listed, but we know it's him. I mean, how could you mistake that painting and that beard for anything but that guy?
No.
I mean,
yeah.
But it's weird because most true crime documentaries, every person is identified specifically, their name, who they are, how they're connected to the case. This is not like that.
There's also a fair amount of this documentary in Spanish that isn't interpreted.
No, you have to put on subtitles to get the rest of it. Because some of it's dubbed. But there's quite a bit. There's some stuff in Spanish that never is even translated. So
the whole time I'm again
sketchy.
kicking myself, like, why isn't my Spanish better? What is the hell is the matter with me? Because there was so much being said there that I wish I could have understood. So if you speak Spanish and you go watch it, you'll probably get a lot more from it than the rest of us did.
You may, especially the news reports they showed.
And the interviews with her. Yeah.
Yeah.
The interviews with Juana, a lot of what she said wasn't translated. So anyway, if you speak Spanish, definitely go watch it because you'll get more out of it than we did probably. But
yeah.
The music, again, The ill-placed music was wild. It was kind of like a telenovela in some
Kinda,
places.
yeah.
And they talk about that this case immediately kind of became like this pop culture thing that even now they
Yeah.
feel like people think this was some kind of a legend versus an
Yeah.
actual serial killer. Juana Barza is the first known Mexican female serial killer in Mexico.
Yeah.
Also, the femicide rates in Mexico. Holy
Oh,
moly.
that's what I know I was forgetting to
I thought
say.
the US really sucked, but man, Mexico said, hold our beer because they are even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
92% of all femicides, so murders of women, are unsolved in Mexico.
92%.
92%.
Yeah. General
Holy
homicides are at about 50%.
shit.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The US is around 50%.
And it's not that the cops didn't care and didn't try to solve it. They did. They were so perplexed. They were trying. They were doing everything that they had the tools to do. They were doing the best they could, but they just didn't have. It is a huge city. And they said multiple times this was finding a needle in a haystack. Now, they'd probably solve this a whole lot faster because there's probably a lot more CCTV and, ways to find it. But I will say, the other thing that killed me, the one murder, one of the number 6, the 6th murder, this was at the very beginning of the documentary. When they searched the home, the family was invited in to help them search the home. And the daughter bagged a cup from the dining room or the living room.
That's right.
That had a print on it that belonged to Juana Barza. She did that, which is wild because in the U.S. a family would never be allowed into the crime scene for weeks and weeks and weeks. But the family was actually assisting in the crime scene, assisting with bagging things, giving insight or input into what they were finding, which I thought was amazing. And actually, despite, they did say that some crime scenes were completely fouled by family that cleaned up immediately.
Cleaned them before the police got there. Yeah.
So the police got there to take pictures and try to recreate the crime scene, and everything had been cleaned because they didn't know. And they weren't like locking down the crime scenes. But the one thing, I thought that was kind of amazing, and it made me think, how often would it behoove them to bring a family member in that knows the house, that knows the way this person lived and the way they operated, to say, tell me anything that seems out of place or whatever. I think that seems like a very good idea. The U.S. goes, get the hell out. Don't come in here. We'll arrest you if you come in here.
Yeah.
Maybe they should let family in. That seemed kind of brilliant to me. And she gave
really
them the fingerprint that helped to solve the case. Yeah.
Well, and now all those families helped them film this documentary because they're all in it playing themselves, which is so weird. Mm-hmm. But at the very end of the documentary, what they show us is that the Lady of Silence is just all over the place in pop culture in Mexico, and that she's one of those. She's like a Ted Bundy in the U.S. She's got this huge fan base, and there's music based after her, and all kinds of characters and different things that are based on her. And that was one of the things that Joel, the guy who really solved the case, who found Juana Barza in his friend's apartment, said was, it's really sad that it's become this pop culture thing and they forget about the victims. And there are a good 50 victims, and many of whom probably will just never know if Juana Barza murdered their family member or not, or if it was Jorge, or, the only thing they ever really got Araceli on was stolen property.
Theft charges,
Yeah, so, as far as
she admitted to that.
She did. She said she was a thief, but not a killer. But Juana Barza never really has given it up on how many of these she killed.
No. And will not give an interview. There was press in the prison that approached her and asked her, told her, hey, this is my name. I'm with this press, group. And she said, I don't give interviews. but if I did, it would cost you 100,000 pesos or 10,000 pesos. Maybe it was 10,000 pesos.
Maybe it was 10.
I can't
It
remember.
was a lot.
It was a lot.
And arrogant.
It was enough that they didn't pay it.
Yeah.
But she said that what she witnessed in the prison is that and this is current, that the guards seemed to be a bit afraid of her. They spoke to her very respectfully. They would say, "After you, Juana," and allow her to. She basically operates in the jail or the prison doing whatever the hell she wants. In fact, on Tuesdays, she's allowed to cook and sell her food to the inmates to make income.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. If anybody has insight on Mexican prisons, please share, because none of this rings a bell to me at all.
Well, in the U.S.,
and I mean, I know
aren't allowed. Like, for example, a lot of you have wondered if Chad Daybell is writing one book after another up at the St. Anthony, Fremont County Jail, and we're quite sure he is. He won't be able to sell those and make any money. I mean, he could give them to his kids and they could sell them, but he won't be able to make any money off of anything from here on out. Lori can't sell the rights to her story and make money, but it seems like maybe in Mexico you can, because she was going to charge big money for an interview, which in the U.S. you wouldn't be allowed to do that.
And she apparently charged quite well for her food as well, that she was allowed to cook and sell in So I don't know.
Stuff. Yeah.
It is the wackiest documentary I have ever seen.
Rolling Stone called it the best documentary of 2023.
It's pretty great.
Did they watch any others?
Some true crime documentaries are quite funny, and this one really is, but I don't know that they meant to be, but it really is. Looking at it from like sort of the standard of true crime documentaries, this one did not hit any of the standards, which I'm not sure is even a bad thing. Music.
Well, it certainly highlights what happened in that whole period. I'm just
they do a good job of the story.
And the guy who did solve it, that did finally see her and catch her, was such a sweetheart. My heart just bleeds for him. He was so devastated that he wasn't there just a few minutes before. He could have saved his friend's life, or at least he hopes he could have. And it was very sad, to see him, the aftermath of that. Like, he's like, I don't care that they caught her. I care that I wasn't here to save my friend, and how much that sucked. Yeah. But you definitely should watch this one. Definitely. You'll learn a lot. You'll have some head scratching moments,
because you'll be glad you did.
Some of the arrogance
if you imbibe.
There was one spot where they had one police chief that was like, we had only the best working on this. We had them recreating the crime scenes. We knew exactly what was going on. The very next guy goes, we had no idea what was happening, and the families were cleaning the crime scenes before we could even investigate them, so it didn't really help us at all. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, it was super inconsistent. Well, and in some places they were so arrogant.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like,
so arrogant.
You guys are not doing a smash up job here, but you sure think you are.
And the whores, bless them, man. They didn't deserve what had coming to them at all.
They did not, but they did a really good job recreating themselves too.
They really did, and they tried, and it wasn't their fault, and they didn't deserve what the police did to them at all.
No, they did not. Not at all. There's music in the background, because go watch this documentary, you'll understand. But the music is so weird. And you want to see the tiger picture again? Absolutely. I was so happy I was able to find this picture. I was like, you have to see this. There you go.
You also have to listen to this
probably
too.
Velvet. Oh, this guy.
I'll tell you one other thing about it that made me laugh a little bit, is that there were interpreters for all of them, of course. And the voices of the interpreters did not match the people, not actors, the real people at all. Like, one woman was like this really young, like California Valley girl kind of voice.
Yeah, and it's
so funny. I'm like, that's not her. But him, Tiger, didn't sound like what you would think he sounded like at all. But
No.
yeah, the interpreting was actually hysterical because it just didn't match up to the players in any way. But anyway, we're so grateful that Juana did finally get stopped, because who knows how many people she would have killed. My God.
Right? She
I mean,
didn't
they
seem to
figure
be
it's around
stopping.
50. Yeah.
Yeah, and she
Yeah.
didn't. She seemed to be just going for as well as she was living off from the money she was making from the thefts, and she was living her luchador dream as well.
Taking her friends out for a good time and just
and
living
everyone
the life.
convinced she was a world champion, even though none of them had ever wrestled her before.
And thank God the police that were there listened to him and ran Juana down. And
it was
took their
that red
lumps.
coat.
It was the red
So
coat.
they'd figured out that and this was her downfall. She was changing her hair and wearing the same red coat every time.
Well, or
a
a
bunch of
different
people
one.
had seen her in that coat.
There was a red turtleneck she'd been seen in, a red trench coat she'd been seen in, a short red coat, which is what she was arrested in, but she was frequently in some kind of red top or coat. That was something that was a constant for her.
So her vanity got to her, I think.
In some ways.
Because it didn't matter if you're changing up your hair, if you're wearing the same color every time, you're still bringing attention to yourself. So it was great.
But also, God damn it to her mother who trafficked her.
Yes. That was horrendous.
Yeah. And
certainly isn't an excuse for what Juana did, but
but
not good.
That's a hard start. Yeah.
Definitely.
So big props to the authorities who did solve this case and who did manage to convict her. The Tiger said that 759 years is that's unheard of. That's
it's
like
a political sentence.
Yes, a political sentence. One other thing that happened, and it made me laugh because of what's happening in the U.S. right now with politics, where we have lots of different parties right now, members of the same party that are very divided, some that are just really off the rails, and some that are trying desperately to rein some in, really on both sides. But, we have political nonsense, wildness going on in the U.S. right now. Well, this triggered some of that in Mexico at the time, and the one party was blaming the other party that they weren't solving this, they weren't doing it correctly, and they started passing out locks to people, to elderly people in Mexico City, the kind that you see in the chain lock, like you see in hotels, that you hook on the door and one goes on the other side, so when you lock it, you can only open the door a little bit to see who's there. They were giving these away for free to people to just try to help keep them safe, and also talking mad shit on the other party. And at one point, they gave one to the chief of police and said they gave it to him because he's an elderly person. And that all made me laugh because that sounds like
some pretty amazing shade. Yeah, it was. It was quite the shade. So this got very political as well, and then the police were just
how could it not?
in deep shit for not solving it for all those years. And it's true. How could they not be?
Right. With that many people getting murdered, I mean, everybody was very scared, and they should have been. I mean, this was just an unthinkable. I thought it was interesting that multiple people said, suddenly we were seeing police in our neighborhood all the time, and we'd never seen them around here like that before. I thought that's really interesting. Yeah. But they were trying, they were desperately searching for anything that looked like someone who might be a serial killer that's killing old ladies. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You're right, Joelle. We'd have to give locks to 90% of our government. Yes, we would.
Mitch McConnell gets 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I know he does.
And the rest of them as well, really. Sorry, Mitch. You seem like a good target right now.
he sort of has done that to himself, yes. Yeah. Well, this is our Drunkumentary. Hope we weren't... I hope we made sense. I'm not totally sure if I did, but I think we've done our best here. Definitely, this documentary is on Netflix. Please go watch it. It's really good, and I am very glad that they did finally catch the little old lady killer.
Oh my goodness! Before she could kill anyone else, because she wasn't slowing down, man.
She had no plans of stopping.
Ahead. But man, it didn't take much pressure at all, and she squealed. She didn't hold back. As soon as they kind of busted her on the first one, she just kind of crumbled and just told them everything.
She
Yeah.
did. Yeah. Interesting. Well, they kind of all either do totally clamp up or just spill their guts with serial
Hmm.
killers. It's kind of how it happens.
Yeah. So big props to those that solved this case. And again, we want to be clear: we are in no way making fun of what Juana Barza did,
Oh,
or the
no.
victims or their families in any way at all. The documentary was funny as hell and also very, informational. So go watch
Yeah.
it. But
Please do.
as always, all of our love and respect to the victims' families, and the
Yes.
victims themselves. And we're just really grateful that this was solved. And we hope that
Mhm.
759 years is enough with no bargaining to keep her in prison until the day she dies.
Because I don't know how long she's going to live. She's some kind of weird giant, so it could be a long
Truly.
time.
Hmm.
Well, you know it. We are the True Crime Squad, and this has been our Drunkumentary.